Street kid saves businessman in danger with an unexpected act. Michael Reynolds struggled against the dark waters of the lake, feeling his heavy suit drag him down as his lungs burned for air. The boat had capsized so quickly during the inauguration ceremony that no one noticed his fall, except for a small shadow watching from the shore. That's when he felt something hit his shoulder, an old tire tied to a makeshift rope. On the worn wooden pier, a barefoot boy pulled with all the strength his small hands could muster. "Hold on tight, mister," the boy shouted, his bare feet planted firmly on the old planks. Michael grabbed the tire as if it were his last hope. The child, who couldn't have been more than 12, pulled the rope with determination that was impressive for someone so thin. His tattered clothes and messy hair contrasted with the willpower he displayed. "That's it. Don't let go," the boy continued, dragging the businessman to the edge of the pier. When Michael finally managed to grip the wooden structure, his strength gave out. The last thing he saw before passing out was the boy's worried face leaning over him. Hours later, Michael woke up in a hospital bed in Lakeville, a small town outside New York. His head throbbed, and the taste of dirty water still lingered in his mouth. A nurse approached when she saw him awake. "You're very lucky," she said, adjusting his IV. "If it weren't for that boy, you wouldn't be here." "What boy?" Michael asked, still confused. "A kid brought you to shore. He waited at the hospital door for hours, wanting to know if you were okay. When he heard you were out of danger, he left." Michael instinctively reached for his pocket. His wallet was gone, but something heavy remained in the other pocket. His gold watch, covered in dried mud, was still there. The boy had taken the cash, but left the most valuable item. "Did he say anything?" Michael asked. "Just asked if you'd be all right. He seemed really worried." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The next morning, Michael called Frank, his head of security, for an urgent meeting. Frank was a big, experienced man, responsible for solving problems others couldn't. "I want you to find the boy who saved me," Michael said, his voice still hoarse. "Because of the wallet, boss?" Frank asked. "No, because of gratitude. That kid saved my life." Frank left with 2 of his men to search the area around the lake. The Crystal Waters Resort, which Michael had been inaugurating when the accident happened, was built on land that once housed a small fishing community. Now it was a luxury development, but traces of the old settlement remained. For 2 days, the team combed every corner of the area without success. Then Frank decided to talk to local vendors. At a small stand selling water and soda, he met Ms. Betty, a woman in her 60s who knew everyone in the area. "A barefoot boy?" she repeated, thoughtful. "Must be Jason. Poor thing. He's been wandering around since his grandmother got sick. Do you know where I can find him? Sometimes he sleeps under the old bridge near the river, but be careful. He's wary of outsiders." By late afternoon, Frank found Jason exactly where Ms. Betty had said. The boy sat on a rock, watching the water flow. When he saw the men in suits approaching, he jumped up, ready to run. "Easy, kid," Frank said, raising his hands. "We just want to talk." "I didn't do anything wrong," Jason answered, keeping his distance. "We know. In fact, you did something very right. You saved a life." Jason's eyes shone with recognition. "Is the man in the suit okay?" "Yes, he is, and he wants to meet you in person to thank you." Jason hesitated. "I took the money from the wallet, but there was a reason." "What reason?" The boy took a deep breath before answering. "My foster grandmother is sick. I needed to buy medicine for her. I had nothing left to sell." Frank felt something tighten in his chest. "And where's the wallet now?" "At Mrs. Grace's house. I kept all the documents safe. I only took the money." When Frank reported the conversation to Michael, the businessman insisted on meeting the boy in person. They arrived at Mrs. Grace's house late the following afternoon. It was a small wooden shack with a tin roof, located in an area Michael recognized as near the land his company had acquired for the resort. Mrs. Grace, an elderly black woman with graying hair and tired eyes, greeted them with suspicion. Jason tried to hide behind her when he saw Michael approaching. "He didn't do anything wrong," she said, shielding the boy. "He was just trying to help me." I know, Michael replied gently. I came here to thank him, not to argue. Jason slowly stepped out from behind the woman and handed Michael a plastic bag. Inside were all the documents from the wallet, carefully organized and dry. Sorry for taking the money, the boy said, looking at his feet. You don't have to apologize, you did what you had to do. Michael crouched to meet the boy's eye level. How old are you? 12. I'll be 13 next month. And how did you learn to swim so well? Jason's eyes lit up. My dad taught me. He worked here at the lake with the other fishermen. Knew these waters better than anyone. Michael felt a chill down his spine. Worked? What happened to him? He disappeared after they kicked all the fishermen out. Jason's voice grew quieter. He said he'd find work somewhere else and come back soon. That was 2 years ago. The businessman looked around, finally realizing where he was. That area had been cleared for the resort's construction. His own company had been responsible for removing the fishing families who had lived there for generations. What was your father's name? He asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Robert Miller. Everyone called him Bobby. Michael closed his eyes for a moment. He vaguely remembered the name on a list of compensation claims he'd signed without paying much attention. At the time, it was just another business expansion project. Mrs. Grace, he said, turning to the woman. Did you know Jason's father? Of course I did. Bobby was a good man, hard-working. When he disappeared, he left the boy with me. I couldn't bring myself to send him to a shelter. And you've been taking care of him alone? Mrs. Grace sighed. I do what I can. I clean houses for work, but at my age and with my health problems, it's been hard. Michael pulled a $100 bill from his pocket and offered it to Jason. To help with your grandmother's medicine. The boy looked at the money, then at Michael. I don't want it. I didn't save you for money. I know, but I still want to help. If you really want to help, tell me where my father is. The question cut through Michael like a blade. I don't know where he is now. But you know why he left, don't you? Jason asked, a painful maturity in his eyes. It was because of your hotel. Michael couldn't lie to that gaze. It was. Jason nodded slowly. Then you owe me this. Help me find my father. On the way back, Michael stayed silent in the car. Frank, who was driving, finally broke the silence. Boss, what do you plan to do? I don't know yet, but I need to find out what happened to that boy's father. You want me to investigate? I do. And Frank, be discreet. I don't want the partners to know about this yet. The following Monday, Michael called an emergency meeting with his two main partners, Dr. William Harrison and Richard Thompson. Both were experienced businessmen who had heavily invested in the resort project. I need to know the details of the eviction we carried out to build Crystal Waters, Michael said, trying to sound casual. Dr. William, a man in his 50s with graying hair, raised an eyebrow. Why the concern now? The project is already up and running. I just want to make sure everything was done legally. Richard, younger and always impatient, retorted, Michael, you're creating problems where there aren't any. We followed all legal protocols. The compensations were paid as determined by the government. I want to see the list of families who received compensation. That was filed 2 years ago, Dr. Williams said, irritated. Why the urgency? Michael made up an excuse about a tax audit, but noticed his partners were suspicious. He decided to investigate on his own. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. That same night, Michael returned to the office after hours. In the company files, he found the folder with the eviction documents. There was the name Robert Miller, with an address matching the area where the resort's parking lot now stood. The compensation paid had been $5,000, a paltry sum for someone who lost their home and livelihood. There was a note stating Robert had signed the agreement, but the handwriting looked different from the rest of the document. Michael took photos of everything with his phone and left the office with more questions than answers. The next day, he sought out Jason again. Did your father know how to read and write? He asked the boy. Yes, he did. He always said studying was important. He taught me to read before I even started school. Do you have anything written by him? A letter, a note. Jason ran into the shack and returned with a yellowed piece of paper. It was a grocery list in Robert's handwriting, with instructions for Jason on what to buy at the store. Michael mentally compared it to the signature on the compensation document. They were completely different. Someone had forged Robert Miller's signature. Jason, did your father ever receive any money from the company before he left? No. He said the men in suits only brought empty promises, that they'd give him work somewhere else, but they never sent anything. Anger began to rise in Michael's chest. Someone in his company had deceived those people, forged documents, and pocketed the compensation money. The next day, Michael confronted Roger Baker, the company accountant responsible for the eviction payments. Roger, I need you to explain how the compensation payments were made. The accountant, a perpetually nervous man in his 40s, began to sweat. They were all made as agreed, Mr. Michael. I want to see the bank receipts. Bank receipts? Roger stammered. Some payments were made in cash as the people requested. And can you prove that? I have the signatures on the documents. Michael showed him the photo of Robert Miller's signature. This signature is forged. Roger's face turned pale. Sir, I can explain. I'm waiting. Some people refused the deal. The partners said we couldn't delay the project because of this. And you forged the signatures? It wasn't just me. Dr. Williams said it was for the greater good, that these people would still benefit when the resort brought development to the area. Michael felt the world crumble around him. His own partners had orchestrated a fraud, and he, through negligence, had signed the documents without verifying them. Where's the money that was supposed to be paid to these people? It was divided among the partners as cost savings. How many families were harmed? 15 families. But sir, please don't fire me. I have children to support. Michael left the room without answering. His mind raced with plans to fix the situation, but first he needed to tell Jason the truth. When he arrived at Mrs. Grace's shack, he found the woman bedridden with a high fever. Jason was beside her with a wet cloth on her forehead. She got worse this morning, the boy said, worried. She needs to go to the hospital, but I don't have money for a taxi. We'll take her in my car, Michael said immediately. At the municipal hospital in Lakeville, the doctors diagnosed Mrs. Grace with pneumonia. She would need to stay hospitalized for at least a week. Michael paid all the expenses without hesitation. As they waited in the lobby, he told Jason about uncovering the fraud. So my father never received anything, the boy said, more sad than angry. No, and I'll find out where he is now. Do you promise? Michael looked into those hopeful eyes and made a promise he knew would change his life forever. I promise. And I'll make everyone pay for what they did. In the following days, while Mrs. Grace recovered in the hospital, Jason stayed at Michael's house. The businessman had insisted, saying it was the least he could do. Michael's house was a mansion in the most expensive gated community in Lakeville, with a pool, garden, and 5 bedrooms. Jason wandered through the rooms wide-eyed, touching the expensive furniture as if it were art. Why are you being so kind to me? He asked one night during dinner. Because you saved me, and because I found out my company hurt your family. But it wasn't you personally. When you own a company, everything that happens there is your responsibility, even if you don't know about it. Jason chewed thoughtfully for a moment. My father always said a man of his word is a man of worth. Your father sounds like he was a wise man. He was. That's why I don't understand why he left without taking me. Michael had no answer for that. But he was determined to uncover the truth, no matter where it led. The next morning he got a call from Frank with an important discovery. Boss, I found something about the boy's father. What is it? I managed to track his records. Robert Miller was working at a fishing company in Santos until 6 months ago. And after that, nothing. Like he disappeared. Keep digging. And Frank, be very careful. Michael didn't know it, but his investigations had already caught his partner's attention. Dr. William and Richard were having a secret conversation in William's office. He's asking too many questions, Richard said nervously. Relax. Michael's always been emotional. This will pass. And if it doesn't? What if he finds out about the other projects? Dr. William stopped shuffling papers and stared at Richard. Then we'll have to take more drastic measures. What Michael didn't know was that the fraud with the payouts was just the tip of the iceberg. Dr. William had used the company to launder money from other questionable businesses, and Richard was his accomplice in everything. Meanwhile, Jason was settling into the routine at Michael's house. In the mornings, he helped Debbie, the housekeeper, with chores. In the afternoons, he visited Mrs. Grace at the hospital. In the evenings, he dined with Michael and listened to stories about business. "Did you always want to be a businessman?" he asked during one of these conversations. "Actually, I wanted to be a teacher. My father pushed me into business." "And do you like it?" Michael paused to think. It had been a long time since anyone had asked him such a simple yet profound question. "I used to think so. Now I'm not so sure." "Because of what happened to my dad?" "Because of many things. Sometimes you lose your way and only realize it when someone points it out." Jason smiled. "My dad always said life is like a river. If you don't pay attention, the current takes you where you don't want to go." The boy's words echoed in Michael's mind for the rest of the night. The next day, he made a decision that would change everything. He called a meeting with Dr. William and Richard. This time he brought Jason along. "What's the meaning of this, Michael?" Dr. William asked, looking disdainfully at the boy. "It means I've discovered what you did to the fishermen's families." Richard pretended not to understand. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the forged signatures, the money you pocketed, the lives you destroyed." Dr. William stood up, trying to assert his authority. "Michael, you're being ridiculous. This boy has gotten into your head. This boy saved me from drowning, literally and figuratively. Look, if you want to help the kid, give him some cash and be done with it. But we're not reopening deals that were settled 2 years ago." "Yes, we are. And we're going to find his father." Jason, who had stayed quiet until then, stepped forward. "Do you know where my dad is?" Dr. William glared at the boy. "Kid, your father left because he wanted to. No one made him do it." "That's a lie," Jason shouted. "My dad would never abandon me." "Jason, calm down," Michael said, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. Richard, seeing the situation spiraling, revealed more than he should have. "His father is working at one of our companies in Key West. We arranged the job as compensation for the house he lost." "So you know where he is?" Michael asked, incredulous. "Of course we do, but we told him not to contact the boy until he got back on his feet." Jason looked from one to the other, trying to process the information. You kept my dad from talking to me." "It was for his own good," Dr. William said coldly. "A child on the streets is a burden he didn't need." The words hit Jason like a punch to the gut. The boy ran out of the room and Michael followed. He found Jason crying in the parking lot, leaning against the car. "They're lying, aren't they?" he asked between sobs. "I don't know, Jason, but we'll find out the truth. If my dad didn't want to be with me, why did he teach me to swim? Why did he tell me stories every night?" Michael hugged the boy, feeling his own anger grow toward his partners. "We're going to Key West, today." The trip to Key West took 4 hours. Along the way, Jason stayed quiet, staring out the car window. Michael tried to imagine the reunion between father and son after 2 years of forced separation. When they arrived at the address Richard had given them, they found it was an industrial fishing company that processed sardines and tuna. The strong smell of salt and fish filled the air. At the gate, an elderly man checked a list and confirmed that Robert Miller did work there. "He's on the afternoon shift today. He arrives at 2 o'clock. It was only 10 in the morning." Michael and Jason decided to wait at a cafe near the harbor. The boy barely touched the sandwich Michael had ordered for him. "What if he doesn't want to see me?" Jason asked. "Why wouldn't he?" "The men in suits said I was a burden to him." "Jason, look at me." Michael held the boy's face between his hands. "You saved my life. You took care of your sick grandmother all by yourself. You've shown more courage and character than most adults I know. You're not a burden to anyone." At 2 o'clock sharp, they were back at the fishing company. The doorman pointed to a man arriving on a bicycle. Robert Miller was shorter than Michael had imagined, around 40 years old, with sunburned skin and calloused hands from hard work. When he saw Jason standing at the gate, he dropped his bike and froze, as if seeing a ghost. "Jason?" he said, his voice choked. "Dad!" The boy ran and threw himself into the man's arms. The two hugged for several minutes, crying. Michael watched the scene with a lump in his throat, thinking of his own father, who had passed away 5 years earlier without them making peace. When they finally pulled apart, Robert looked at Michael suspiciously. "Who are you?" "Michael Reynolds. I own the company that built the resort where you used to live." Robert's face hardened immediately. "What do you want here?" "I want to apologize and fix the mistakes my company made. Apologies won't give me back 2 years of my son's life." "Dad, he's trying to help," Jason intervened. "Jason, you don't understand. These men promise a lot and deliver little." "This one's different, Dad. He saved me when Mrs. Grace got sick, and he's been looking for you for weeks." Robert looked back and forth between them, confused. "Looking for me? Why?" Michael took a deep breath and began telling the whole story. About the accident at the lake, how Jason had saved him, the discovery of the fraud in the compensation payments, everything. When he finished, Robert had tears in his eyes. "So my boy saved you without even knowing who you were?" "He did, and taught me more about character in one day than I'd learned in 40 years of life." Robert hugged Jason again. "I'm sorry, son. I'm sorry I believed them when they said you'd be better off without me." "What exactly did they tell you?" Michael asked. "That they'd give me a good job in another state, but I couldn't take Jason because it was too dangerous. That once I was settled, I'd send for him. But every time I called, they said it wasn't the right time yet." "And you believed them?" "I was desperate. I lost my home, my job, everything. I thought Jason was better off with Mrs. Grace than struggling with me." Jason held his father's hand. "Dad, I'd rather go hungry with you than be rich without you." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. The three spent the rest of the afternoon talking. Robert explained how he'd been deceived by Michael's partners, how he'd sent letters to Jason that were never delivered, how he'd saved money to come back for his son. "I've got almost $3,000 saved," he said. "It was for a small house so I could bring Jason here." "Dad, you don't need to anymore. Michael said he'll help us." Robert eyed Michael warily. "What do you want in return?" "Nothing. I just want to do what's right." "Sorry, but I've heard that before." Michael understood the distrust. "You're right not to trust me, but let me show you with actions, not words." The next day, Michael, Jason, and Robert returned to Lakeville. The first stop was the hospital so Robert could reunite with Mrs. Grace. The elderly woman was doing much better, no longer feverish and ready to be discharged. When she saw Robert walk into the room, she burst into tears. "Bobby, my boy, where have you been?" "I'm sorry, Mrs. Grace. I was tricked, but I'm back for good now." "Thank God. Jason missed you so much." After the emotional reunion, Michael took everyone to a hotel while he sorted out the pending legal matters. The next day, he had a meeting scheduled with Dr. William and Richard that promised to be explosive. Michael entered the conference room accompanied by Robert and a lawyer he had hired to represent the affected families. "What is the meaning of this, Michael?" Dr. William asked, clearly irritated. "It means we're going to make amends for all the harm done to the fishing families, starting with Robert's family here." Richard tried to stay calm. "Michael, we can't undo closed deals just because of sentimental whims." "It's not a whim. It's justice. You forged documents and took money that wasn't yours." "Prove it," Dr. William challenged. The lawyer placed a folder on the table. "I have here a handwriting analysis of the forged signatures, witness testimonies, and a recorded confession from the accountant Roger." Dr. William and Richard turned pale. "Roger recorded the confession?" Richard asked nervously. "He did. And he also revealed other schemes you were running through the company." Dr. William stood abruptly. "This is a betrayal, Michael. You're destroying everything we built together." "No, you destroyed it. I'm just trying to rebuild on solid ground." "And how do you plan to pay the settlements?" "The company doesn't have that kind of cash available." I'll sell my shares in other businesses and you'll do the same. Never. Then you'll face criminal charges. The choice is yours. Robert, who had stayed quiet until then, spoke up. Gentlemen, my son taught me that life is like a river. You can try to swim against the current of justice, but it always wins in the end. Dr. William looked at Robert with disdain. What a lovely philosophy, but business is business. And family is family, Michael countered. You separated a father from his son. That's priceless. The meeting ended without an agreement. Dr. William and Richard refused to cooperate voluntarily. Michael knew he had a legal battle ahead, but he was ready to face it. In the weeks that followed, the story spread through town. The local paper ran a story about the boy who saved the businessman and uncovered a conspiracy. Public opinion turned against Dr. William and Richard. The resort started seeing reservation cancellations. Tourists didn't want to stay at a place built on injustice. Economic pressure began to take its toll. During this time, Michael helped Robert find work at a fishing cooperative that had formed at another lake in the area. It was honest work, allowing him to stay close to his son. Jason returned to school at a public school in Lakeville. Michael covered all the supplies and uniforms, even paying for tutoring to help him catch up on lost time. Mrs. Grace fully recovered from pneumonia and returned home. But now she didn't have to work so hard, as Michael had set up a fund to support her and cover her medications. One evening, as they all had dinner together at Michael's house, Jason asked a question that surprised everyone. Michael, why don't you get married and have kids? Jason, Robert scolded, you can't ask questions like that. It's all right, Michael smiled. It's a fair question. The truth is, I've always been so focused on business that I never stopped to think about it. But don't you get lonely? I used to. Before I met you all, I felt so alone, even when surrounded by people. And now? Now I feel like I have a family. You. Robert was moved by the declaration. Over the past few months, he had learned to respect and admire Michael. He saw how the businessman had changed after the accident, becoming a more compassionate and generous person. 2 months later, Dr. William and Richard finally gave in to the pressure. The company was losing so much money from the public boycott that they had no choice. In a meeting mediated by the judge overseeing the case, the three partners reached an agreement. Dr. William and Richard would hand over their shares of the company to Michael in exchange for a promise not to face criminal charges. Michael, in turn, committed to compensating all the affected families and creating a sustainable development program for the region. The first step was turning part of the resort into a community cooperative. The former fishermen returned to work on the lake, but now in an organized and sustainable way. A portion of the profits went to a community fund that financed education and healthcare for families. Jason became a kind of ambassador for the project. In meetings with investors and officials, he shared his story and explained how the resort had changed for the better. Before, this place was only for the rich, he said, with the simplicity only children possess. Now it's for everyone who wants to work and live in peace. 6 months after the final meeting with the partners, Michael organized a celebration to mark the official reopening of the resort, now renamed Community Waters. The party was held on the same pier where Jason had saved Michael. The spot had been renovated and became a symbol of the transformation that had taken place there. During the celebration, Michael gave an emotional speech. "A year ago, I nearly drowned in this lake, but I was saved by a brave boy who didn't know my name, my bank account, or my connections. He saved me because I was in danger. That's it. That boy taught me that a person's worth isn't in what they have, but in what they do. And today, thanks to him, this place is no longer just a business. It's a community." Jason sat in the front row beside his father and Mrs. Grace, all dressed in new clothes Michael had insisted on buying for them. "Jason," Michael continued, "you saved me in 2 ways. First, you pulled me from the water. Then, you pulled me from a life without purpose. Thank you for showing me that being truly rich has nothing to do with money." The boy smiled and waved, embarrassed by the attention. After the party, while people chatted and danced, he slipped away to the pier where he liked to go when he wanted to think. Michael found him there, sitting on the edge with his bare feet in the water. "Tired of the party?" "No, just wanted some time alone." Can I sit with you? Sure. The two sat in silence for a few minutes, listening to the gentle sound of water lapping against the pier. Michael, Jason finally said, thank you for everything you've done for me and my dad. I'm the one who should be thanking you, Jason. You changed my life. You know what my dad told me today? What? That sometimes God puts the right people in the right place at the right time, and we don't need to understand why. We just need to accept it. Michael smiled. Your dad is very wise. He also said you've become part of our family, is that true? If you'll have me, yes. Jason stood up and hugged Michael. Of course we will. Family isn't just about blood, it's about who cares for each other. A year later, Michael officially adopted Jason as his son. Robert, who had married a teacher from town, agreed to the adoption because he knew it would be best for the boy's future. This way, he'll have two families, Robert said, the family of the heart and the family of blood. Jason continued living with his father, but spent weekends and holidays at Michael's house. During the week after school, he worked a few hours at the resort, learning about management and administration. The Community Waters Project became a national model for sustainable development. Other entrepreneurs began visiting the area to learn how to implement similar projects. Jason, now 14, had grown into an articulate and intelligent young man. He spoke at conferences about social responsibility and sustainability, always sharing the story of how an accident changed everyone's lives. Many people think helping others is a waste of time or money, he said during one of these talks. But the truth is, when we help someone, we help ourselves too. It's like throwing a stone into water. The ripples go far beyond where the stone landed. One Saturday afternoon, 2 years after the accident, Michael and Jason were fishing on the pier. It had become their tradition. Every Saturday, father and adoptive son spent a few hours together fishing and talking. Jason, have you thought about what you want to be when you grow up? I have. I want to be like you. A businessman? No. A person who helps others. It could be as a businessman, teacher, doctor. The job doesn't matter. What matters is what we do with it. Michael felt his chest swell with pride. I'm sure you'll succeed. And you? What do you want to be when you grow up? The question made Michael laugh. I think I'm already too grown up, don't you? My dad always says we never stop growing inside. So, what do you want to be? Michael thought for a moment. I want to be a better father, a fairer businessman, a wiser man. You already are all that. Only because you taught me. Just then, Jason's fishing rod bent sharply. A big fish had taken the bait. Help, Michael, it's huge! Michael grabbed the rod alongside Jason, and together they pulled the fish onto the pier. It was a nearly 4-pound bass, the biggest they'd ever caught together. Should we let it go? Jason asked. Why? Because it fought so hard to live. It deserves a second chance. Michael smiled and helped Jason release the fish back into the water. As they watched it swim into the depths of the lake, he thought about how perfectly those words summed up everything that had happened between them. Everyone deserved a second chance. The fish, the fishing families, himself, even Dr. William and Richard, who had moved away but were trying to rebuild their lives more honestly. Jason, Michael said, thank you for giving me a second chance. Thank you for giving me a first chance to have a father who'll always be here. The two walked home as the sun set over the lake. On the calm water, the last rays of light cast a golden reflection, as if blessing the place where tragedy had turned into a miracle. Mrs. Grace was waiting for them with a special dinner. Robert and his wife Mary were there too. It was like this every week. The family gathered, talking, laughing, planning the future. During dinner, Mary announced she was pregnant. It would be her first child with Robert, and Jason was excited at the prospect of having a little brother or sister. Will it be a boy or a girl? Jason asked. We don't know yet, Mary replied. But either way, we'll teach them the same thing your father taught you. What's that? That life is like a river and we have to choose whether to swim with or against the current. Jason looked at Michael with a mischievous smile, and that sometimes we need to throw a rope to someone who's drowning. Everyone laughed at the joke, but there was deep truth in those words. In just over 2 years, a simple rope tied to an old tire had changed the fate of dozens of people. The Community Waters Resort now employed over 100 people from the area. The school Michael had built served 200 children. The community health center provided free care for all families. But more important than all these numbers was what had happened inside the people themselves. Michael had learned that money without purpose is a gilded cage. Robert had discovered that sometimes you have to fight to keep the family together. Jason had realized that saving one person can save the whole world from them. 3 years after the accident, Jason turned 15. The party was held at the same pier where it all began, but now the place was unrecognizable. There was a beautiful wooden structure with benches and a small stage where community events took place. During the party, Michael made an announcement that surprised everyone. "I've decided that when Jason turns 18, I'll transfer 50% of the resort's shares to him." The boy was stunned. "Michael, I can't accept this." "Why not?" "Because it's too much. I didn't do anything to deserve it." "Jason, you saved my life. You saved my soul. You saved dozens of families. If that doesn't deserve a reward, then nothing in this world does." Robert stepped forward and placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Jason, accept it. But always remember to use that power to do good. What if I make a mistake?" Michael smiled. "Then I'll be here to help you fix it. That's what fathers are for." In the early hours after the party, when everyone had left, Michael and Jason stayed alone on the pier. It was their tradition. Whenever there was an important occasion, they talked there, in the place where it all began. "Jason, do you regret saving me that day?" The boy thought for a long moment before answering. "I only have one regret." "What?" "That I didn't meet you sooner. Imagine all the good things we could have done together if we'd met when I was younger. But maybe it wasn't the right time. Maybe I needed to nearly drown to learn how to truly live. Maybe. My dad always says everything has its right time." "And what's the right time now?" Jason looked at the starry sky reflected on the lake's surface. "Now is the time to be happy, to take care of family, to help those in need, to do good without expecting anything in return. And to fish on Saturdays," Michael added. "And to fish on Saturdays," Jason agreed, laughing. The two stayed there until dawn, talking about dreams, plans, and memories. When the first ray of sunlight touched the lake's surface, they walked home hand in hand like true father and son. 5 years passed. Jason was now 20 and studying business at a university in New York. Even from afar, he returned every weekend to Lakeville to fish with Michael and help manage the resort. The Community Waters Project had become so successful that other states began implementing similar models. Michael was invited to give lectures across the country, always accompanied by Jason. At one of these lectures in Washington, D.C., a young entrepreneur asked what the secret to the project's success was. "The secret," Michael replied, "is understanding that a good business is one where everyone wins: the company, the employees, the community, and the environment." "But doesn't that reduce profits?" the entrepreneur pressed. Jason, who was in the audience, asked to respond, "Sir, when you only think about immediate profit, you lose a lot of money in the long run. Our resort has a 95% occupancy rate year-round. Why? Because people want to visit a place where they know they're doing good. And beyond that," Michael added, "there's a kind of profit that doesn't show up on financial statements, but is the most important of all, the profit of a clear conscience." After the lecture, father and son went to dinner at a restaurant in Washington, D.C. During the meal, Jason told Michael about a decision he had made. "I want to drop out of college." Michael nearly choked on his food. "Why?" "Because I want to start a non-profit to teach swimming to underprivileged kids, just like you did with me, but on a bigger scale." "Jason, you can do that after you graduate. Education is important." "I know, but I've learned way more working with you than I ever will in any college, and there are thousands of kids who don't know how to swim and live near water. How many lives can we save?" Michael felt a mix of pride and worry. "And how do you plan to fund this non-profit?" "With my share of the resort, I want to sell my stocks and use the money to set up swimming schools in 10 small towns." "Jason, that's a lot of money, are you sure?" "Absolutely. Remember what you taught me? That money only means something when we use it to do good." Michael smiled. recalling his own words. "All right, but on one condition." "What?" "I'll be your partner in the non-profit, 50-50. "Michael, you don't have to." "Yes, I do, because this idea is so good I don't want to miss out." In the following months, father and son worked together to create the non-profit Life-Saving Waters. The first swimming school opened right on the lake in Lakeville, at the same pier where Jason had saved Michael. On opening day, over 500 people attended the event. There were families of fishermen, town officials, journalists, and even some of the children who would benefit from the project. During the ceremony, an 8-year-old girl named Emily Johnson approached Jason. "Mister, is it true you saved a rich man and became rich too?" Jason crouched down to her level. "Emily, I saved a man who was drowning, and I learned that when you save someone, you save yourself too." "What do you mean?" "Before I met that man, I was just a sad boy begging for food on the street. After I saved him, I became a son, a student, a businessman, and now a swimming teacher. I saved him, but he saved me too. And now you're going to teach me how to swim?" "We will. And once you learn, who knows, maybe you'll save someone too." The girl smiled and ran back to her parents. Jason watched her play with other kids by the lake's edge, all wearing colorful life jackets. Michael walked over and put his arm around his son's shoulders. "What's on your mind?" "I'm thinking maybe that girl will be the next one to save someone, and the person she saves will save another. And so on. A chain of rescues." "Exactly, like ripples in water." Just then, Emily shouted from the lake, "Jason, come here, I want to learn how to swim now." Jason took off his shirt and jumped in, followed by Michael. Within minutes, they were surrounded by dozens of excited kids, all eager to learn their first swimming moves. As he taught Emily how to float, Jason looked up at the sky and whispered a prayer of gratitude. Gratitude for being in the right place at the right time. Gratitude for having the courage to act. Gratitude for finding a family in the midst of so much hardship. "Jason," Emily said, "when I grow up, I want to be just like you." "How so?" "I want to save people in the water. Then we'll train hard so you can be strong and brave. Do you promise you'll teach me everything?" Jason glanced at Michael, who was teaching other kids a few feet away. Then he looked back at Emily and made the same promise Michael had made to him years before. "I promise, and I'll always be here when you need me." The afternoon flew by. As the sun began to set, the families left, but Jason and Michael stayed on the pier, as they always did on special occasions. "Dad," said Jason, "thank you for adopting me." "Jason, I'm the one who should thank you for adopting me first." "What do you mean?" "You adopted me as family the day you saved me, long before any official paperwork. You gave me a chance to be a better person. And now we're going to give that same chance to other children, to other families, to other communities." Jason smiled and hugged Michael. "Forever?" "Forever." The lake's waves lapped gently against the pier, creating a rhythmic, soothing sound. In the sky, the first stars began to appear, reflecting on the calm water's surface. In that peaceful moment, the two men, one who had lost his purpose in life and another who had grown up without guidance, realized they had found far more than they ever expected by that lake. They had found a family. They had found a purpose. They had found themselves. And it all started with a simple act of courage, a barefoot boy who didn't hesitate to throw a rope to a drowning stranger. Years later, when reporters asked Jason what the most important moment of his life had been, he always gave the same answer. "The moment I decided to act instead of just watching. Because that's what changes the world. Not the intention to help, but the act of helping." And when they asked Michael what his greatest business achievement had been, he would smile and point to Jason. "My greatest achievement wasn't building a financial empire. It was building a family and discovering that true wealth isn't in what we have, but in what we give." The story of Michael and Jason spread across the country, inspiring other entrepreneurs to rethink their practices and motivating young people to believe that small actions can have big consequences. But for them, the most important thing wasn't fame or recognition. It was the simple fact that every night, as they lay down to sleep, they knew they had made a difference in someone's life. and that tomorrow they'd have the chance to do it again. The end. So what did you think of this story of transformation and hope? Do you believe small gestures can truly change entire lives? Let us know in the comments which part moved you the most, and if you've ever experienced or witnessed a similar situation. Don't forget to like this story to support more inspiring tales like this one.